This week, Chad Bilyeu in Amsterdam is back with a new book, The Re-Up. Chad's reminiscing about the time he took over a marijuana business in Washington, D.C., pre-legalization. It's a good book, but why this particular story? Mulele joins me to discuss. First, if you appreciate the work we do on Deconstructing Comics and our other podcasts, we'd love it if you'd support the show at patreon.com/deconcomics for as little as $2 a month. Check out our goals and rewards and pledge your support now at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
And Mulele.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Mulele also in Tokyo. Long time no anything. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Still kind of holding my shit together, doing the same old, same old. Podcast died, but that's a whole other story.
Well, I thought it was all part of your podcast retirement. But
well, I mean, I kind of jumped into podcasting with Oscar and Chris, but the deal was if one of us was out, then all of us were out. And one of us decided he had had enough.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if Mulele's back, then you know that the book is by Chad Bilyeu.
Oh, yeah.
Chad in Amsterdam. Although this is not an issue of Chad in Amsterdam. This is, well, he sounds a little vague about whether this is all that there's going to be or if it's the first issue of a new series. It does have a number 1 on it. It's called The Re-Up. And, of course, he's the writer, and his artist is Juliet de Wit, who I gathered is Dutch. Of course, he's still in Amsterdam, but he's American. And this is as usual with Chad, it's kind of memoir. It's talking about things that actually happened to him. And this is about, apparently, the time when he was sort of convinced to sell marijuana and kind of run a marijuana business that had already existed, and somebody needed to be running it. So this is kind of the build up to that. This first issue, when he decides to go ahead with it at the end of the issue. Now, the first thing I noticed about this was that it's kind of a hybrid of comics and prose.
Yeah,
which I thought was an interesting change for him. Usually, he's been doing straight up comics with some like a page of commentary somewhere, but this is like it's a novel or a prose book, but then the illustrations are comics, and there are some sequential panels too. It's not just like one panel comics. Some of them are, and then some of them have 2-3 panels or a whole page maybe of comics. What did you think of it?
I actually quite liked it, but of course, I mean, it's Chad. So there are artistically, it is quite nice. I like the 2-color. I'm not exactly sure how he printed this, but I mean, we have digital copies,
black and green.
Yeah, it's a 2-tone comic, but we have digital copies, but it looks like a Riso print comic. If you're into Riso comics, then you know what I mean. But I have no idea how it was printed, but it has a very nice quality to it. I'm guessing green because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
But still, it works. It's done very well. The art is very nice. There is a lot of it's a mixture of comics and prose, but in the middle there's a 2-page spread, or I guess it's 2 comic pages in the middle that only have one line of dialogue amongst 8 panels, and it's kind of curious to me because the wordiness of it is just in describing what's going on, but if the picture does the job, then he shuts up, which is a really interesting choice.
Yeah, there's a whole chunk of comics here in the middle with no prose.
Yeah, I really like that. But I mean, some of the pages just have no words. I mean, nothing at all.
Right. Yeah.
Which is,
no word balloons, nothing.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure what to expect when you told me it was half prose, half comics.
Hmm.
And I can understand why it was done this way once I read it.
Hmm.
It works, it is its own thing. And the voice of the artist and the writer are equally represented here. I thought it worked.
Yeah, I mean the prose part, it's kind of like you're watching a movie and that's the voiceover.
Hmm.
And there'll be sections where there's a lot of voiceover and then sometimes the voiceover goes away and it's just dialogue.
Yeah,
So that's what
kind
we've
of
got
like
here.
the Goodfellas of comics, I guess. Um, yeah,
I don't really have experience with the subject matter. I mean, people might have known how straight laced I grew up. I was not really a user of substances like that, but I don't think it should be illegal. So I'm, it's ridiculous how a lot of people get thrown in jail for years and years for just possessing some.
there are people who are still in jail for having possessed it in states that are now calling it legal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a really fucked up situation. But to that point, though, I did have one worry, and I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but at the last page with the voicemail, he says that he's going to be talking about not only this, but other things that he sold as well in future issues. And I kind of wondered about the statute of limitations for some of this stuff and
Hmm.
whether or not he should be doing, if they're willing to prosecute a person over rap lyrics, who's to say that doesn't extend to comics? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it, and maybe Chad has already looked into it and has realized he's fine. But I mean, this is a comic that has little black bars over the people he was involved with back in the day. This is like 2004 to 2008. So I don't know. He doesn't want to blow up their shit now if they've gone straight, or there's still a little bit of danger for them, or it's just a gag. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he mentions, yeah, in that voicemail page that this happened in the Washington D.C. area, and nowadays, a lot of what he was doing would have been legal in the
Yeah.
D.C. area. So,
Well, in this one, yes. But if he was selling other substances that are still illegal,
yeah.
then there's a question there.
Hmm.
I don't think anybody's going to come after him because, I mean, as good as Chad's work is, he's not as high profile as a Marvel comic. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, if the writer of Thor starts talking about how he does cocaine currently, then that might be a little bit of a trouble. But
Yeah.
I don't know. For my own sense of the drug, I was pretty straight laced when I was a kid. I had an uncle who was a junkie, and it kind of showed me the dangers of drug use.
Hmm.
But as an adult, when I went back to the States, I partook a couple of times. Yeah. The last time was 2019 when I went to, no, 2020 when I went to Chicago. It was newly legalized there. My sister had a bunch. I've never been so high in my life. My fucking God. Much stronger than anything I had ever had before. But the entire world was kind of at a tilt for much of the evening. But I remember everything quite clearly.
Hmm.
But I mean, there are other experiences that I've had where, I'm in LA, my friends score some pot, I take it, and turns out that the person who gave it to him mixed it with PCP.
Hmm.
And so I'm high for 2 days. Everything's moving in slow motion. It was really fucking horrible. And after that, I was going like, okay, I'm good. I don't need any more drugs. And that was it for the rest of my LA trip. But yeah, in Japan, drugs is not really a thing you can do casually.
No, I
If
mean,
you,
even
yeah,
marijuana is super illegal here.
Super illegal, and if I get caught up in any of that shit, I'm deported.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what my visa status is or whether or not I have family here, and I don't need that kind of trouble, so I just don't.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I always like Chad's writing. I mean, even, as a proofreader, there are things that maybe I would adjust a little bit, but I like his turn of phrase in some points here, like when he refers to graduating from college as trying his hand at reality.
Yeah.
Or when he talks about having a car that was customized with premature dents and damage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so I enjoyed those. And I liked when the guys drop in the drugs in the trunks and you need to clean out your trunk. All this junk back there.
Yeah, I did have some questions about this. Just to kind of go briefly over the plot of this book, because we haven't quite done that yet. Chad reminisces about when he was in Washington, D.C., going to Georgetown University.
He was working at Georgetown, yeah.
Oh, he wasn't actually attending?
No, he said, I worked full-time at Georgetown as the night supervisor in the audio-video department.
Right. Okay. Yeah. People thought he was young.
Yeah, they thought he looked 22, and so
with the undergrads. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm straight. But yeah. So through his job, he meets a guy who sells pot. They smoke up, and there's a drought. Washington dries up, and they have to find a new supply chain. And Chad knows a guy. And so that's basically it. They kind of have this Pulp Fiction-esque ride through without the violence, of course. Mm-hmm. And they re-up. And this is kind of about how he became involved in the drug scene as a dealer, not as just a smoker.
I'm sorry, what does re-up mean?
Re-up, so you get a supply of whatever. And when you finish that supply, you go back and get another shipment.
Okay.
And that's called a re-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the same word can be used to mean re-enlist in the military, but anyway.
Yeah. It maybe it comes from there. I don't know. But basically, it means to get another portion. I guess from the military, you get another tour.
Yeah.
But yeah, my question here is why this story? I mean, it is a personal thing, and he does talk about how it's, given the current climate, it's one of those stories that you just lose to history, I guess. But what makes this so necessary for him to tell now?
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit kind of. I mean, we've seen, in the Chad in Amsterdam series, when he talks about a lot of different issues, and some of them are really like, oh wow, the Santa Claus thing in the Netherlands, and some of the other topics that were kind of eyebrow raising, and others that were just kind of sweet things like talking to his mom on the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. Why this story?
And if he does do a series about his life at that time and some of the things that he did. Whereas one thing with Chad in Amsterdam, there were times when I looked at the story and I thought, okay, he's reminiscing or he's commenting on an experience that kind of struck him. And he thought, no, I got to talk about this. And I could really feel it in the writing. This one seems to be plucked out and examined pretty thoroughly. I'm just not sure why.
Well, maybe it'll become clearer in subsequent issues, like why he's thinking about this situation again. Like what was the result of it? Did it cause some big problem for him, or did it cause him to re-examine his life in some way? Maybe it's just not clear because this is the first issue.
Well, there is one point that I thought maybe this has something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe it'd be good to ask Chad sometime.
Well, I'm sure he'll be listening to this, so he'll send us an email probably.
All right. Well, there you go, Chad. Please send us an email and answer the question. But the last line in the book is both Juliet and Chad quit smoking the herb in 2021. And if he is re-examining his connection with the drug, maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah, it could be. I missed that little sentence on the back page there.
Yeah.
Not quite the back page, inside back page.
Yeah. Yeah, but if that's it, then I kind of get it. But it's not really mentioned anywhere in the book. It's more deductive guess.
Yeah, it might have come together a little bit better if he'd said something somewhere in the issue, like, now that I'm not using it anymore, I'm kind of thinking back to this time when I was selling it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder though, is there some particular thing he wants us to take from this? Whereas there was an examination of culture in a lot of Chad in Amsterdam, which, as an African American living abroad, I found incredibly fascinating, and I do, in fact, based on his stories, want to go to Amsterdam and check it out. I would definitely like to hang with the man. In fact, I've hit him up already and said, "Man." Maybe sometime soon.
Are you going to do the Mulele in Tokyo series?
No, I don't think so. Well, actually, all of my comics are Mulele in Tokyo anyway.
That's true. Just under a different title.
It is a curious topic. And I have mixed feelings here. Sorry, not to drag it out too much, but I have some mixed feelings here as to why he's doing this instead of Chad in Amsterdam, why this needs to be a separate title. But also I'm happy that he's doing something that is separate from Chad in Amsterdam. I mean, it's not set in Amsterdam and really has nothing to do with it.
Right. This is Chad in Washington, D.C. So.
Yeah. But it's kind of curious.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like watching Leonard Nimoy as Spock all these years, and then suddenly he's in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So, like, wait a minute, he has normal ears.
What the heck? I thought those were his real ears.
Exactly.
Coming up, this book ends rather abruptly. Is that a good or bad thing? And more. But first, a reminder to join us for bi-weekly 20th Century TV and music trivia quizzes and more on our Patreon page. Every month, patrons donating $4 a month or more also get a full-length podcast episode reviewing an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man by Lee and Ditko, and the transition to John Romita Sr. is coming up fast. Check out our goals and rewards at patreon.com/deconcomics. If you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults, too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every other Thursday. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
One point in the art that I was a little confused about, on page 5, where he goes to this math class where the professor is having trouble with the projector, and apparently he just didn't turn it on.
Yeah.
And there's the sequence where, so you can see these formulas behind him, and Chad presses the button on the remote, And then he hands it back to the professor, and now the formulas there are gone, and the panel looks darker. And I didn't quite follow. I mean, I figured if he turned on the projector that it would be lighter rather than darker. So I was a little confused by that last panel.
I would assume that it was turn on the projector, turn off the lights, and there you go, or to show that the projector is now
that's
on.
true. He would have turned off the lights.
Yeah, but I mean, it's I understand what you mean. They seem to have kind of edited out a step there, but still, I think to show that the projector is working. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Here's your remote. Do your class now. But also to show the teachers, the teacher is a teacher teaching something. They put the little equation in the background. Mm-hmm. But once that's established in 2 panels, it's like, okay, we don't need this anymore. Just what's the point of the panel?
And then also in that last panel, you can see Chad's shadow on the desk.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the light source? Is that the projector?
Yeah, the projector behind him and the screen in front of him. So double light source. That's why you have a shadow on his back and a shadow in front of him. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let the artist run with that one. If I start picking out stuff like that in comics, my OCD will creep up and I'll never be able to go home.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I don't really see it as a mistake or as a really like, wait, what the hell is this? But I used to do that stuff with Marvel Comics when I was a kid. And I remember specifically in an issue of Power Pack. You remember Power Pack?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like 1984 or something. I'm reading the letters column for some reason. I barely read the comic, but I'm reading the letters. And this guy is like, well, in panel whatever on this page, it kind of, with the shadows, it kind of looks like the shadows are weird. What's going on there? And the editor is in this like, no, the kids are flying, so they're hovering above the ground, so the shadows are not connected to their feet, and that's it's like what an odd thing to be obsessive about. But in comics, especially when it comes to making comics, there's a lot of shit I just let go. Otherwise, it drives me insane. I mean, I learned to let it go with my own art, and so it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be, that guy who says this artist, but then be the artist who does the same thing. So.
Now, the end of this issue, I felt a little, something was missing. So he announces that he'll do it. He'll take over the business after sitting and thinking and smoking for a whole page. And then we just have pictures of different amounts of pot and gives the amount in grams, and then we see what that looks like. And I guess that's not exactly part of the story. That's just for reference.
I would say that once you are dealing, that is what you're dealing with. You're breaking up your stash into these increments to sell. I'm not sure, though. I've never bought and I've never sold. I've only received. So,
and just the way that the issue ended kind of threw me off balance a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm just used to seeing something that says "to be continued" or a little bit more of a cliffhanger.
It is a little abrupt, but it has a very, to me anyway, it has a very short story feel to it.
Short story?
Yeah.
Short story. Okay, sorry. Short story.
What?
I thought you said shirt story. Like, what's the shirt story that goes with the pants story and the sock story?
It must be my American accent. Sorry.
Okay, I'm Japanese. I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it sounds like he hasn't decided if this is just a short story, just a graphic novel, just this issue and done, or if we're going to get the rest of the story.
Well, I think for this bit, it is a story, because at the beginning of the story, he's being asked by his friend to take over the business, and he says no. And what we look at is the context of that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we get to the end of the context, he then says, okay,
yeah.
I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking at, how he came to be this person, or how he came to be in this situation anyway.
Yeah, origin story.
Yeah, basically. And it does end like a, well, I don't want to get my film reference here wrong, but I was going to say like a Jim Jarmusch story. But to be honest, it's been a while since I've seen some Jim Jarmusch, although The Dead Don't Die was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, some scenes will go on longer than you expect, and some scenes will end abruptly. And that's kind of the signature style of I don't know, all short stories, but a lot of short stories, because there are some things that they want to indulge in, and some things are like, okay, that's enough. We'll just cut it there. And finding those edit points, sometimes they're interesting. Because like he is abrupt on the ending here, but the point of this end was exactly, I'll do it, and that's all you need. As I say, start late and end early. But if we look at the middle of the comic, he's got 2 pages dedicated to an IHOP parking lot. And then a few pages later, he's got a page dedicated to a trunk switch off. So he is indulging in some points, some scenes. He's taking his time with them. But other times he's very sharp with ending it. And if you're in the business, then I'm assuming that, you're checking your shit and you're dividing it up, and this is what everybody's asking you for. And so that's what you have. It just seemed like an abrupt chop to the story, but it wasn't out of place to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've never had an American cell phone, and of course this happens at a pre-smartphone time.
Yeah.
And the guy says, dial your number and send yourself a missed call. And I was like, what does that mean?
This is to trade phone numbers, I assume.
Okay, that he's handed him his phone in the previous panel. Okay, now I get it. Okay.
That part wasn't real clear to me either, and I had to go back and look at it again and saw like kind of the cell phone kind of half sticking in the window.
Okay, now I get it. Okay.
Yeah. But overall, I enjoyed the comic, and I enjoyed this comic more than I enjoy most comics for a couple of things. Number one, the story is well told.
Yeah.
Even if the content I have some questions about. Not as to the value of it, it's good, but as to the why of it. And the other reason being because having read all of Chad's comic work, I don't know the man that well, but I know his comics, and I've come to appreciate his voice. And so for me, that is the other part of it. If you are into what Chad has done in his other comics, you'll be into this, because to know his comics is to know, at least to a certain extent, the man.
Yeah.
I don't know, unless he's a lion, if Chad is actually some rich white guy.
Well, I've talked to him on Skype with the cameras on, so I can guarantee you he's not a white guy, and I don't know his finances, but
yeah. Well, no, just because of the mention of rich white guys in the comic, but no, if you appreciate his other work, this one, he brings the same eye, same voice to this, and I do appreciate it. I am very curious as to where he takes this from here, and if he does give us a kind of a why or a final assessment of what this means to him, or if he just leaves it as it is and lets us think about it.
Yeah. But yeah, as always, we appreciate Chad's work. And yeah, Chad, thanks for sending us the issue. Well, I think he tweeted something about how he always shares the stuff with us first. So that's nice.
Well, we were the first to kind of take on his comics and show him some love. But I mean, if you're into Marvel comics, this is not going to work for you.
if you're expecting Marvel comics and you don't want any other kind of comics, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. If you're into Marvel comics and you're not into independent comics, then yeah, it's not going to work for you. And there are some. When I tried to shop Mindgator, there were a lot of like podcasts and whatnot. It's like, we don't want indie comics. We don't care about your Kickstarter. And then I look at what they're actually reviewing. It's like, all right, we're doing Marvel. We're dabbling in DC. It's like, okay, I don't really want to be held up under those lights anyway. But if you're down for some just good comics, if you're down for the form and it doesn't matter who made it or what the subject matter is, then this will be good.
Follow the link in the show notes to buy the Re-Up #1 from Bistro Books. You can help the Deconstructing Comics family of podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and we'll critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read it and record our critique. Last Saturday in this feed, we released a talk I had with Adam about Brand Bionic, The Sable Peril by Don Ahay, so be sure to check that out. Next week, Emmett and I finish our walk through Jack Kirby's Fourth World with the 1985 graphic novel The Hunger Dogs. Kirby packed this one to the gills with meaning, and we'll try to unpack some of it next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.